Thanks, everybody, and good morning. Thanks for wading through all the talking and slides about what we're doing in research IT. And that's actually, that question was a perfect segue to a conversation about research data management, which is a very broad topic and a lot of different kind of needs in this space that I'm sure many of you are familiar with and have your own kind of versions of that question. What do I do about X? This is really problematic, and I see some potential disasters down the road. So why data management? Looking back, it was only in 2011 that the National Science Foundation began requiring data management plans be submitted with proposals. So that was only 4 years ago or so. But they weren't really ahead of the times then. They were really responding to a number of trends and pressures that were occurring within the institution, within research, and actually outside as well. Things like, of course, the enormous growth of data, but maybe even more so the recognition that there's a lot of value in existing data to be reused, and the emergence of data science and big data, things like that. We're really kind of pushing on this. In addition, the emphasis and discussions about reproducibility of science and research results also really helped kind of give rise to this notion that, well, researchers should be really planning for their data and even more so, planning to share that data and make that data available for other researchers. So that's just kind of some of the background. Here on campus, it really became kind of, I'd say, painfully clear that each researcher was solving these problems or addressing these challenges in his or her own way. Sometimes with great results, sometimes with mediocre results, but certainly in very inefficient ways in terms of how the campus as well, in terms of how the campus was responding to this. There was really no campus-wide approach to solving some of these problems and responding to some of these challenges. A couple of summers ago, we in Research IT partnered with our colleagues in educational technology and with the library to really look at what other universities were doing in terms of some of these areas, high-performance computing and research data management. And we certainly found that UC Berkeley was, maybe not surprisingly, not doing the best job it could compared to Stanford and MIT and Cornell and places like that. And we were seeing that this was really becoming a strategic differentiator for some institutions of higher education, and that Berkeley was not keeping up with that. So we knew that this was a campus-wide issue that we really would require a partnership and a lot of thinking and some time to address these challenges. And there is, as Aaron and as Krishna have said, and Patrick as well, a real connection between these kind of research data management challenges and the computation environments that you've heard about earlier today. So whether the conversation has been about cloud computing, high-performance computing, virtual workstations, the obvious question is, yes, but my data need to be part of this as well. And so I think that's always been the case, but because this is such a rapidly evolving space, it seems like this need and this complexity and kind of that crucial connection between data and computation is even more real and more kind of complex too. So it's a really exciting thing to be involved with, but also quite challenging. Part of what we're doing is, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing right now to pull together some services and provide some consulting, but we're also trying to find out what are the big needs. What are the things that people really need to have done so that we can then go to campus leadership and say, look, we need some ability to take advantage of these additional resources, or we need a large-scale archiving data storage system. So part of this is to make the case and raise awareness about the issues so that then together with the library, we can make the case to campus leadership for additional services in this space. So that was a little bit about why research data management is something that we're focusing some effort on. And I'm really excited to tell you about what we call a modest launch that we did this week of a couple of services. One is consulting. You've heard a lot about that here. We see that as really important. How can we just sit down with people and help steer them in the right direction? How can we learn what their challenges are, but how can we really help them get going with existing solutions and workarounds that others have discovered? So researchdata@berkeley.edu is an email address that people can use right now, and I'll say a little bit more about that consulting service in a later slide. We've also developed a research data management guide at researchdata.berkeley.edu that really pulls together some existing services that exist here on campus, as well as best practices and examples and case studies. You know, we certainly come across people when we talk to them that don't even know that there is a backup service, or don't understand that Box and Drive have unlimited storage. So some of this is just making sure people know in this huge university with all its complex bureaucracy that there are some existing services that can be helpful right now. We'll also talk about some next steps. All right, so what is research data management? So one really important point is just to acknowledge that it's not something that is a problem or a need in one discipline here on campus, in one department. It really spans all of the disciplines here at UC Berkeley, and I've tried to kind of represent represent that diversity here in these slides, pointing to field-based data collection, people who are digitizing books, doing text mining, certainly the big data fields that are producing massive amounts of data and statistical analysis on these. But it's really something we're seeing different versions of the same challenges in a lot of different places. So, but there's that kind of, and given that we're also using a very broad definition of data, which includes things like digitized images, that means that it's really hard to kind of nail down what it is we're trying to do. So one thing I'd like to emphasize is that research data management is not about IT support. This is not an IT issue. This is really about supporting research. That's really the kind of focus that we try to bring to this. And that's where sitting down with you and talking about your research workflows, the ways that you're generating and using data, and with your computation as well, this is what we're really trying to help, is bring that kind of perspective to what we do with you. It's also not just, again, about tabular numeric data. And we really think of this kind of broad range of scholarly inputs, kind of the subjects of research as well as the products and outputs of research. And it's really something that researchers, you are doing this, obviously. You are managing your data, so it's something that you're doing, but the campus isn't doing all that it could do to help. So that's where we're really starting here right now. Okay, so some examples. Let's actually bring this down to some things that we're hearing from people right now. So just getting some help writing data management plans. Examples of data management plans are one of the things that you'll find on our research data management guide site. Graduate students leave. Often those are the people who have maybe organized your data files, and somebody spends the next summer rediscovering your data, and that's like an archaeology project on someone's computer, and that's lost time. I see a lot of head nodding, so Jamie, great question that you found there. This is one I experienced personally. I tried to find my dissertation project data files and then do something with them, and 20 years later, that was quite a challenge. So this is something, again, data, they come back up, and occasionally you find value in those old data sets. Security and sensitive data issues. This is one we hear from a lot of people. That they don't know what the requirements are for their data, and even if they knew, then they wouldn't know what they could do to say, store or handle their data using, according to the requirements that they have found out. How can I get credit for sharing my data? With the increasing emphasis on reusing data, making data openly available, a lot of questions about how can you get credit, how can your data be cited, these kinds of things. I need to understand what my funding agency is requiring, right? These things are changing all of the time, and we plan to track that. Where can I store my data now? Right? There's often some urgency with these questions as we hear these in our conversation. So another just kind of recognition is that research data management there's a workflow here to this, and it's different at different points in time for your research project. So at the point of your proposal, when you're writing your data management plan, there's kind of one set of activities and thinking that you're doing. During the project itself, obviously, you're right in the thick of it. Managing your data maybe that's one of the most important things, or maybe it's just actually very tangential to the main part of your research. And then after the grant is over, after the research is completed, you have another set of activities that you're really responsible for. So, data management changes over time. We also like this view, which is one that we've put together recently with our team, is kind of related to what as a campus we would like to focus on and provide to the research community. So taking some of those same kind of data lifecycle components of planning, organizing your data, what you actively do during your project to manage your data, where you store and back up your data, and then how you preserve and share your data into the future. That's kind of the life cycle. We have some questions here or some examples of the kinds of things that you might have to do, like create documentation or assess your rights and information and licensing, provide for real-time collaboration with people on your project team, including people beyond campus. And then at the center of that, we put training, support, resources, and consultation. So this is kind of the visualization we're trying to use to show how it all kind of fits together, how we'd like it to fit together. Right now, the circle is pretty fractured, so that's what we're trying to address right now. So at Berkeley, we really see this as a very broad issue, and the library and research IT have really joined forces here to work on this together, to provide some services, advice, and then to make also the case for additional services. So it is a campus-wide collaborative effort, and we work with a lot of people, and there's a slide in a minute that will show just a subset of people who've come talk to us in the past about this. We also have strong support from the California Digital Library in Oakland, which is helping. It's actually part of an international community of groups that are developing services related to research data management. So they have there's a tool called the DMP tool, which is a wizard for writing data management plans, and the CDL is a major, the major developer and service provider for DMP tool. They provide services. There's something called Easy ID, so if you need to have a unique identifier that's tied to your data set, there's a service that's actually available here on campus through the Berkeley Library, but that is kind of provided by the California Digital Library. So they're a strong partner. And as with, as Patrick and Aaron mentioned, with high-performance computing and cloud computing, there really is a very broad network of people around the states, of course, and even internationally, who are focused on this issue. There's a great conference right now taking place in Paris. I would have been there, but I had to come here. The Research Data Alliance. So there's a lot of groups that are really actively looking at this area. And the other thing about our program is that really we are starting, in a fairly modest way, but we plan to grow quickly. And as we make the case and show that we can make a difference, we hope to actually grow the service. Okay, so campus-wide participation. Back in March, we had a workshop for service providers, the library, campus shared services, IT, educational technology, et cetera. And we were inviting people that we knew to come to this workshop, and word got out to more people and more people and more people, and in the end, we had a very large group. So, we see researchers kind of at the heart of this community for research data management. And the library and research IT with our partners in IS&T and California Digital Library, we're kind of really leading the charge here on campus. But we had all of these other groups represented at this March workshop. And of course, funding agencies and publishers, they weren't at the workshop, but they're also kind of the stakeholders in this space. And now if I were to add a few more bubbles, we would be spilling over the slide. Every time we go out and talk to somebody, we discover another office or another officer who has an interest in this topic. Okay, so a little bit about the services that we're offering starting this week. Again, we have a consulting service which can be reached through this email address, researchdata@berkeley.edu. We have a small team of dedicated consultants, both from the library and research IT, who are monitoring that directly, and they then have access to a very broad network of people around campus. And some of those are people within the library and research IT, also people within IS&T and the California Digital Library, people from the D Lab, Berkeley Institute for Data Science, Geospatial Innovation Facility, et cetera, et cetera. So part of this is to bring together this network and help steer you in the right direction so that you can send a question to us and we can put you in touch with the right people. Right? So our goals are to really help you with your research data questions and make sure you're getting to the right person, and hopefully not experiencing what is typical Berkeley bureaucracy, which is you start with one person, get to another person, and eventually you get back to that same person. Hopefully we will circumvent that kind of cycle and steer you to the right person quickly. We will also be posting office hours in some physical locations, such as the Library Data Lab, which is in Doe, the D Lab, which is in Barrows, and also the Berkeley Institute for Data Science, also in the Doe Library. So we're going to have a physical space where people come anyway, and we have drop-in hours, schedulable time, et cetera. So we're still building out some of those tools to host those kind of things. All right, so we've also developed an online resource, the RDM guide, researchdata.berkeley.edu. And this is, well, it's also just starting out. So right now what we have is a very information-rich site which points to existing services, best practices, and so on. When we've shown this to faculty, most of them have said, that's just too complex. But this is a site that can really be of use to our service provider, our consulting network. So we're trying to pull together all of the information that we have about the existing services and best practices into one place so that our consulting network can be kind of most effective with this. In the future, in the near future, like in the next month, we'll also be providing a more kind of user-friendly, engaging front page, which is partly about kind of raising awareness and making sure people know this is here. And then, contact RDM Consulting. If you want to go learn about metadata and identifiers, you can go to this page, but all over the place, we're pointing people to send email to researchdata.berkeley.edu. Right? So we're trying to contact people and reach people in whatever ways work. And part of that is going to be discovery, and part of that is by having a very, a big net with a lot of places to find people and catch people. That's part of why we're here also, is because we really want to hear from you directly or by people that you work with. What are the questions that are coming in, and how can we help? So we'll be around after this and look forward to talking with you. You can see one thing I've done here just to kind of reduce the complexity of the RDM site rather than do a demo of it right now. Just show the navigation bar here on the right of this slide so you can see the sections. We have data management planning, section on data best practices, section on active data management, meaning kind of during your project, what are some of the things that you need to do, what are some of the resources available, sharing and preserving data as a section, and then a sections on case studies, direct link to RDM Consulting, we have the email address and some phone numbers up there, and we will also be offering training and workshops, and those can be based on you asking us for some help. Could you come to our department meeting or to our lab group and talk about storage or how to use Box for our research group in an effective way? We would love to do that. So just breaking down, showing the second level of this navigation menu. So within data management planning, you see we have some sample data management plans. We can be available to help you with grant writing or with data management plan writing. And we point you again to this, what's called the DMP tool, which is offered by the California Digital Library. And there's experts within the library here who also can help people with using that system. Data best practices covers a range of topics from finding data, which eventually will include complex topics like licensing and data use agreements, how you can organize and document your data to make it more likely that it will be reusable in the future. This is a big topic. And that also ties to providing metadata and identifiers that uniquely identify data sets or even atomic data elements. And then working with sensitive data issue, which is obviously a big topic that a lot of people have brought up with us. Two of the other sections in here, the active data management, so how to work with collaborators and research teams in terms of your data, different places to store and manage your data, options for backing up your data. Some of these are very thin. Right now we point to UC Backup, and we also point to Amazon as an option. But then we would be bringing in the cloud team to talk about how they could help you use something like Amazon Glacier as a resource for backup. using a database, relational database, pointing to the services here on campus. And other campus research data resources such as the D-Lab, Berkeley Institute for Data Science, Berkeley Research Computing, etc. A section on sharing and preserving data, why sharing is important, what it can help accomplish, information about publishing and citing data, license, selecting a license for your data, for instance, from Creative Commons, and then information and guidance on how to select data for preservation, how to find a repository or some within your discipline or here on campus using a system called Dash, pointing people to best practices and kind of what the state of the art is now, acknowledging that this is really moving quite fluidly and dynamically. All right, so in terms of some next steps, so this fall and spring, we really want to go out and talk with the research community as well as with our service provider network about the consulting service and the guide, and use those conversations to just keep building the thing out and improving it. And we want to use those conversations also to identify additional needs, new services that people are asking for, examples of similar services we're seeing at other schools and other universities. We've certainly heard that storage for research data is a big issue, right? Whether it's small amounts of data or 64 terabytes of data. That's definitely one we hear about, and we're in conversations with the storage and backup team within IS&T about that topic. It will come down to funding, right? Of course. Again, sensitive research data and best practices and consulting and guidance is definitely something we're hearing a lot of. But what else? And we'll open it up for Q&A in just like 2 minutes, and would love to hear other things that you would like to have and that you're hearing about within your communities. In January, we're really hoping that we're successful enough and have demonstrated what we're doing is important, so that in January and February in the spring, we can do a bigger announcement to campus, both pointing to what we've done and also kind of anticipating some of the needs that we think are important, so that we can start building kind of some groundswell for some of these new services that we are going to need to go to campus leadership and say, we've heard from X number of people, including these important faculty member in labs, that they need X service. How can we respond to that need? We're falling behind. It's the kind of, only the research community will help us make that case. If it comes from IS&T, people will say, yes, that sounds really important. Now let me go listen to the faculty member who's banging on my door. So we really look forward to working with the researchers here that in the room and represented by people here to make that case. So with that, let me open it up to questions, discussion, ideas, please. I'm really eager to hear what you're thinking. A couple of microphones and just open it here. We also have Eric Mitchell from the library, Associate University Librarian. Thank him for coming. And members of the Research Data Management team are also here. Rick Jaffe, Jamie Wittenberg. Who have I missed? Yes, question.
So the claim is that Box and Drive are unlimited storage. Is anybody going to complain when I start dumping terabytes of data there? Because I'm about to do that.
Good. Yeah, we've actually, in my group, we had a need to archive a bunch of digital images that we'd accumulated over about 20 years. And we just dumped like 10 terabytes on there, and they said, yes, let's use that space. So my assumption right now is that using Box and using Drive is definitely a good thing to do. Some of the challenges you might run into is how long it takes to transfer the data. So that's where we might actually want to have a conversation. We have people working on that question right now. There are different ways to transfer data to Box using FTP tools and things like this that we're actually trying to learn what is the fastest way to get data over to a service like Box.
Box seems to have a limit of 5 gigabytes per file, so that doesn't work for me.
Okay, 5 gigabytes per file, and Drive's limitation is?
5 terabytes.
5 terabytes.
That I can work with.
That's good.
Box is 15 terabytes. Or sorry, 15 gigabytes is the max file size.
Oh, it's 15 gigabytes?
Yeah, it's still too small.
Okay,
Yes.
great. let us know how that goes. Yeah.
Does Box work like Dropbox in that it will synchronize its files to all the other systems that have connected or authorized?
So the question is about the syncing. Does Box sync in the way that Dropbox does? And there is a Box sync tool. I have to admit, this is one where I haven't used it as much, but
It does, and you share a folder with people, and they're shared in the Box folder. So yes, you share a folder in Box with people, and then their Box sync on their local, there's a client on their local machine, would be able to sync that down to their hard drive. And
It's able to, but it's not forced. You can decide.
you can decide to.
Terabytes and terabytes, and you're not going to shove it.
Right, exactly.
You don't want to put that on your laptop.
But if a change is made, then the sync starts immediately. So files locally are up to date, as long as you're on the network.
yeah, Rick is definitely our Box expert on our team. So thank
Well,
you.
the Box team, they had a meeting at 11, but they were here.
Yeah, we work. We actually sit right next to the Box team in the Be Connected service, so we have a good relationship there. Raymond.
What kind of guarantees are there for long-term access for data that you put into Box? And also, can you slap a DOI on top of anything that you put into Box?
Those are great questions. Yeah, I think, so this is really an issue, and at least with Box and Drive, there is a campus agreement with those in terms of, service level agreements. So we know a lot of people use Dropbox, right? And in that case, it really then is the relationship of the researcher to Dropbox, and it's really the responsibility of the researcher to make sure that they understand what Dropbox guarantees. I don't actually know in terms of kind of long-term access or if Box and Google have even put that limit. So that's a great question that Jamie or Rick, can you make sure? I forgot to bring my pen, so if you could write that down, and maybe Jamie has a response to that.
I'll just add that, in terms of ensuring long-term access and having a DOI issued, a really good option might be using Dash, which is a front-end interface to Merit, a system that's run by the California Digital Library and supported locally here at Berkeley. Using an institutional repository might be a really good option for that.
That's a great point, and I would say in terms of using other systems, a DOI is a digital object identifier, so it's one of the kind of methods for creating a unique identifier that's guaranteed to remain unique, and to associate that with a data set. You could imagine writing a script or a program that did that, and then put the DOI somehow in the metadata of a file that you then put in Box. But that's something you have to build on your own. So these are the kinds of examples we'd like to actually put together and say, well, if we wrote a little thingy that did that for people, a script or something, maybe that would actually have a lot of utility. So, Raymond.
How much does it cost to put data into Box versus Dash? And storage and bandwidth?
Those are they're both free.
I can speak to Dash. So Dash is a service that, as Jamie says, is built on Merit, which is a replicated bit storage platform hosted by CDL. It actually uses UC-wide storage to create 5 copies of things, and then they bit check them. The library is underwriting the cost of Dash for UC Berkeley researchers, including students, kind of during this pilot phase, which is now in its 2nd year. Dash is great for publishing small data sets. I believe the upload limit is it 5 gigs? I should know this better. It's on our documentation. I think that's kind of Dash is not intended to post your 200 terabyte data sets. Sorry about that. Although Merit will do 200 terabyte data sets, you just can't afford the bill, right? So the UC library and the UC system as a whole is guaranteeing to keep the digital objects that go into Dash for as long as we guarantee to keep digital objects. Box and Google Drive are really interesting. In the library, we've adopted them, but we've been a little hesitant just because the files tend to belong to a person, and people leave, and that already has created some management issues that we're just trying to figure out internally. But it's really compelling. I mean, I keep all of my data on these cloud services. When I leave, I won't care about it anymore.
Right.
Accounts are great.
Yeah.
SPA accounts are special purpose accounts that allow you to associate your content, in Box especially, with a research group rather than with an individual, because many people have probably experienced what can happen with Dropbox when one person leaves or deletes the content on that they thought was just on their machine, and then it goes away for everyone else. So, special purpose accounts are something we'd be happy to talk about if you would like to. Great. Other questions? Okay, thank you. I will turn this over to Patrick to close us out.